Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Julie's Orchids. Today, we're going to answer a viewer's question. And my viewer, Christy8280, asked me specifically how this plant was doing. Well, this plant is Phragmipedium pearcei, and we're going to have a look at it. Okay, so a few days ago, I had a viewer of mine, Christy8280, watch a pretty old video on my channel, a video from November the 2nd, 2022, and this was called Phragmipedium pearcei 9 Days In. So back in 2022, I started transitioning my entire collection into pumice out of bark. I started off first with the terrestrial types and my slippers, specifically my frags and my paths, because in my climate I was struggling with keeping them as moist as they liked it. So back in November of 2022, I did a quick 9-day follow-up on how Phragmipedium pearcei was responding to the pumice. And then I really haven't addressed it since then. And thank you, Christy C8280, for asking me how this plant is doing. And as you can see, it looks like it's doing pretty good. But I'm going to take the camera off the tripod and we'll zoom in and go into a bit more specifics about the plant, how the plant has responded to the setup change. Like I said, this is April of 2024, and this plant was put into that pot in November of 2022, and it has not been repotted, and I am not planning on repotting it anytime soon. However, because of its growth pattern, I may have to put it into a wider pot. Okay, so first thing I'd like to point out is that this plant has been in flower for a while. When I got the plant, I did not realize that it was multifloral and would continue to flower over and over and over again off the same flower spike, because the first time it flowered for me, 2 fans flowered. They each put out 1 flower, and that was it. Now, this time around, I've only got 1 fan matured to flower, and it's been in flower off and on for quite some time. And what we can see here is a very beautiful bud. And you can see a little split right here. So this bud is getting ready to open. And I just want to pull the flower spike down and show you what I mean. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This thing has put out 8 flowers off of 1 spike, and it's getting ready to open another flower. Now, when it made this one, I thought, oh, well, that's the end of the flower spike. It's going to be done. And then it branched off to do this one. So I'm just letting this thing go until the flower spike turns brown and shrivels up, because it's just kept going and making new flowers. And well, you don't complain about that. If you see the video, and I'll put a link to that video in whichever corner it goes into, you'll be able to see the size of the plant then versus now. And obviously it was only 9 days in, so there wasn't a lot of root growth down into the pot. So we'll kind of hover up over to the top of the plant, and you can see that it's really gotten very bushy. I've gotten some leaf tip burn because for a while there my RO water wasn't working, and I had to replace my unit. So I've got some leaf tip burn, and frags are really notorious for this when they get too much nutrient. So this is because I had a malfunctioning RO unit, and these things just got way too much nutrients. Now, Phragmipediums don't need a lot of feed at all. You can overfeed them and kill them quite easily. These things barely get any fertilizer, calcium, magnesium, or seaweed, just barely. And I've made jokes about it before in the past. If this was, a medication that you give a human, the amount of nutrients you give this would be, downright homeopathic levels of, you know, maybe 50 parts per million, if that. They just don't need it. And if you do give them too much, you will know immediately because you'll get leaf tip burn on the bottom like that. So despite that, this plant has grown 1, 2, 3, 4 new growths since putting in this pot. It came with this one. You can see the old flower spike and that one. Those were the 2 spikes, and everything else it's matured or grown. And I'm sorry, this is a new growth here too also. Now I think I'm going to have to repot this one into a wider pot because this one's kind of grown right to the edge of the pot. And as you guys know with slipper orchids, they don't like their roots exposed to air. Otherwise, there's nothing wrong with the roots or the media. It's just because my plant's gotten too wide and rambly for the pot that it's in. I'm just going to leave it for now, mostly because I don't have a pot big wide enough to put this in, and I need to find it. It is starting to make some new root growth. It looks like it might go down into the pot. If not, we might have to make an emergency trip to a store somewhere to find a pot wide enough. But depth-wise, it's not been lifted out of the pot. This has been a pretty good depth for the roots of this plant. And speaking of roots, this is I think what Christy C was curious about. How are the roots handling this setup? And so we'll zoom in on that. Okay, let's zoom down to the bottom of the pot. As you can see, the roots look pretty darn happy. They're just all the way down to the bottom of the pot. They filled the pot quite nicely. They're all the way down into the water reservoir. It's been a week since I've watered this plant. It's a Saturday morning. As you can see, the reservoir is empty. However, the internal contents of this pot, the pumice, is still quite moist. And I find that the slipper orchids absolutely love this setup in my climate. With the exception of the leaf tip burn, the leaves are nice and healthy. The second flower spike that the second flowering that it's produced for me has made, you know, this was a flower, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Who's going to complain? Again, leaving this flower spike because we got a bud coming. I thought originally when this flower was forming that we were done, but then it shot off a growth over here. And you know what? Look, there's another bud right there. So yeah, this thing just, you know, it's the Energizer Bunny. It just keeps on going. And I'll put a picture of the flower when it's open because I do have a couple pretty ones. I think this is a gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous species. And we've got a bud getting ready to open there. Okay, there you have it, Christy C 8280. 1 year and a bit follow-up on, almost 2-year follow-up on Phragmipedium pearcei after it was transitioned from bark into pumice into a, you know, sort of self-watering semi-hydro setup. In my climate, in Perth, Western Australia, growing indoors, these plants love it. If you're interested in trying it on your Phrag, just give it a go. You'll see if they like it or not. If you're having trouble keeping your slipper orchids moist enough in the bark setup, I would suggest giving this a try. Christy, I thank you so much for your question, and I hope the video has answered that for you. So the plant seems to love being in pumice. I thank you guys so much for watching. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up. A subscribe would be great. And everyone have a fabulous day.